Commander Zaltek stood on the bridge of his massive warship and watched the small blue planet through the viewing screen. His yellow eyes showed no emotion as he studied the third world from this system's star. Earth, the local inhabitants, called it. Soon it would just be another dead rock floating in space. The Kethran had done this 47 times before. The process was always the same. Arrive at the edge of a solar system. Study the primitive species living on their little worlds. Show them the power of the Dominion by destroying something big like a moon or asteroid. Then give them 72 hours to surrender or die. No species had ever said no. No species had ever said, none had been stupid enough to fight back against the might of the Kethran Dominion. Zaltek's second-in-command walked up to him. Sub-Commander Vextar was younger, but just as confident in their superiority over these humans. Commander, our scouts have finished their reports on the third planet. Tell me what we face, Zaltek said without looking away from Earth. The species calls themselves humans. They have barely left their homeworld. Their ships use chemical rockets that take months to reach their own moon. They have nuclear weapons, but nothing that could penetrate our shields. Their largest cities hold millions, but their total population is less than 8 billion. They should surrender within hours of seeing our fleet. Zaltek nodded. It was exactly what he expected. These humans were even more primitive than the last 3 species they had conquered. The Zephyrians at least had energy weapons. The Alterian colonies had shields on their cities. These humans had nothing but crude missiles and the kind of nuclear bombs his people had used thousands of years ago. Have they detected us yet? He asked. Yes, Commander. Their primitive sensors picked up our fleet about an hour ago. They are sending radio signals in all directions. Panic appears to be spreading across their planet. Good. Fear made species more willing to surrender quickly. The Kethran had learned long ago that a terrified enemy saved everyone time and resources. Better to crush their hope immediately than waste time with actual fighting. On Earth, President Kate Manning sat in the Emergency Command Center buried deep under the White House. The room was filled with military officers, scientists, and world leaders connected by video link. Everyone was talking at once, but she could barely hear them over the sound of her own heartbeat. How many ships? She asked NASA Director Paul Rodriguez. We count at least 200 vessels, Madam President. The largest one is over 2 miles long. Our best estimate is that each ship could level a major city with a single attack. Kate looked at the screen showing radar images of the alien fleet. They sat motionless at the edge of the solar system, like hungry wolves watching a flock of sheep. She had been president for 3 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. What about our defenses? General Susan Blake spoke up from her position at the military console. We have 12 destroyers in orbit and about 40 fighter craft. The International Space Station has been evacuated. Our nuclear submarines are moving to launch positions, but their missiles probably cannot reach the alien ships. Probably? The truth is, we do not know what their technology can do, Madam President. We are flying blind here. The main screen flickered and suddenly showed the face of an alien creature. Kate tried not to flinch as she looked at Commander Zaltek for the first time. His head was larger than a human's, with yellow eyes that had no pupils. His skin looked like green leather, and when he spoke, she could see rows of sharp teeth. I am Commander Zaltek of the Kethran Dominion. You will listen and you will obey. Your species has been selected for integration into our empire. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Your governments will step down. Your military forces will disarm. Your people will prepare for relocation to designated work colonies. Kate found her voice. And if we refuse, then your species will join the 47 others who chose extinction over service. The choice is yours. The transmission ended. The room fell silent, except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of air conditioning. Kate looked around, at the faces of the most powerful people on Earth, and saw the same expression on all of them. They looked like children who had just learned that monsters were real. But in a small laboratory in Montana, Dr. Lisa Harper was not thinking about surrender. She was running calculations on a whiteboard covered in equations that most people could not even read. For 3 years, she had been working on theoretical quantum tunneling for deep space exploration. The idea was to create shortcuts through space by bending the fabric of reality itself. The project had been stuck in the theory stage because the power requirements were enormous. The equipment needed would fill several buildings and use more electricity than most cities. But as Lisa stared at the alien ships on her computer screen, she realized that desperate times called for desperate measures. "How much power does the Montana power plant generate?" she asked her assistant, Dr. Kevin Walsh. "About 2,000 megawatts. Why?" "Because I think I know how to hurt them." Lisa had been thinking small. Space exploration needed precision and safety. War needed neither. If she could build a crude version of her quantum tunneling device, she might be able to send small objects directly through solid matter. Objects like bombs. The aliens expected humanity to panic or surrender. Lisa Harper was about to give them a third option. She grabbed her phone and started calling every physicist she knew. If they only had 72 hours, then she was going to make every second count. Outside, people around the world looked up at the night sky and wondered if they would live to see another sunrise. Most prayed, some cried, others started looting stores or saying goodbye to loved ones. But some humans did what humans had always done when faced with impossible odds. They got angry, they started planning, they refused to give up. Commander Zalthek had conquered 47 worlds by studying their defenses and exploiting their weaknesses. But he had never studied human history. He did not know about Valley Forge or the Alamo or Stalingrad. He had never heard the stories of humans who chose to fight impossible battles rather than surrender. If he had, he might have brought more ships. Captain Joe Martinez gripped the controls of his destroyer as it climbed toward the alien fleet. Behind him, 11 other Earth ships followed in tight formation. They were humanity's entire space navy, and everyone knew they were flying to their deaths. "All ships, this is Admiral Rick Thompson from Luna Base," came the voice over the radio. "Remember, we are not trying to win this fight. We are trying to learn how to hurt them. Get as much data as possible and transmit it back to Earth." Joe looked at his crew. They were all young, the best pilots Earth had to offer. None of them expected to see home again. But they had volunteered anyway because someone had to go first. "You heard the Admiral," Joe told his weapons officer. "Record everything. How their shields work, how their weapons fire, how fast they move. The people back home need to know." The alien ships grew larger on the viewing screen as the human fleet approached. The smallest Kethran vessel was 3 times bigger than Joe's destroyer. The largest looked like a floating mountain covered in weapon ports. Commander Zalthek watched the pathetic human attack force with amusement. 12 small ships against his fleet of 200. It would be over in minutes. He had seen this kind of desperate gesture before from other species. They always sent their military forces on suicide missions to show their people that they had tried to fight. "Do not destroy them all at once," he ordered his weapon crews. "Let them fire first. I want to see what their primitive technology can do." The first human missiles streaked across space toward the alien fleet. They were nuclear weapons, the most powerful devices humanity had ever built. On Earth, one of these missiles could level a city and kill millions of people. They exploded harmlessly against the Kethran energy shields, creating brief flashes of light that faded in seconds. Joe watched his best weapons bounce off the alien defenses like raindrops hitting a window. "Fire everything," he ordered. "Missiles, railguns, lasers, everything we have." The human fleet unleashed every weapon they carried. Nuclear missiles, electromagnetic railgun rounds, focused laser beams, and conventional explosives filled the space between the two forces. For a moment, the darkness of space lit up like the 4th of July. When the light faded, the alien ships floated unchanged. Their shields had not even flickered. "Analysis complete," reported the science officer on Joe's ship. "Their shields operate on rotating frequencies. They change the energy pattern every few seconds to prevent any single weapon type from building up resonance. Transmitting data to Earth now," added the communications officer. That was when the aliens fired back. The Kethran plasma beams were weapons of pure energy that could cut through solid metal like a knife through paper. Joe watched in horror as the destroyer next to his ship simply vanished, cut in half by a beam of green light. "Evasive maneuvers," he shouted, but it was too late. His own ship shuddered as alien weapons tore through the hull. The lights went out. The artificial gravity failed. Through the breach in the sidewall, he could see stars spinning as his ship tumbled out of control. "Engineering report," Joe called into his radio. "Engine room is gone, Captain," came the weak reply. "We are dead in space." Joe looked around the bridge at his surviving crew members. Half the control stations were dark. Smoke filled the air. But the communication system still worked. "This is Captain Martinez to all Earth forces. Alien weapons cut through our armor like it is not there. Their shields are too strong for our weapons. But they have patterns. The data is in the computers. Someone back home needs to figure out how to use it." Before he could say more, another plasma beam struck his ship. Captain Joe Martinez and his crew died, knowing they had given humanity its first real information about how to fight the Kethron. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it was over, 12 human ships were debris floating in space. Admiral Thompson's lunar base was a crater on the moon's surface. Every human military vessel in space had been destroyed. But the data they had gathered was already racing toward Earth at the speed of light. Dr. Lisa Harper received the battle analysis while she was still working on her quantum tunneling equations. The information changed everything she thought she knew about the problem. "Their shields work by deflecting incoming energy," she explained to her assistant Kevin. "But what if we do not send energy at their shields? What if we send it directly inside their ships?" "How is that possible?" Lisa pointed to her equations on the whiteboard. "Quantum tunneling allows particles to pass through barriers that should be impossible to cross. If I can make the effect big enough, we could send objects directly through their hull without hitting their shields at all. Objects like bombs." Exactly like bombs. Lisa had been trying to build a safe, controlled device for space exploration. Now she was designing a weapon that could teleport nuclear warheads inside enemy ships. The power requirements were still enormous, but she thought she could make it work with the Montana power plant. The problem was time. The alien ultimatum would expire in 58 hours. Building and testing her device would take at least a week under normal circumstances, but these were not normal circumstances. Lisa started making desperate phone calls. She needed every physicist in the country to drop what they were doing and help her build the most important weapon in human history. Meanwhile, President Kate Manning addressed the world from the White House. Every television and radio on Earth carried her words. "Fellow citizens of Earth," she began, "our brave military forces have fought the first battle against the alien invaders. They paid a terrible price, but they gave us valuable information about our enemy. We now know that conventional weapons cannot penetrate their defenses." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "But we also know that they are not invincible. They have weaknesses. Our scientists and engineers are working around the clock to find ways to exploit those weaknesses. We will not surrender. We will not give up. We will find a way to defend our world." Commander Zalthek monitored the human communications with growing irritation. Why did these primitive creatures refuse to accept reality? He had just demonstrated that their entire military was helpless against his forces. Any rational species would surrender immediately. "Sub-Commander Vextar," he called. "Yes, Commander? Prepare the ground invasion forces. If these humans will not surrender, we will have to conquer their planet the hard way. Should we begin orbital bombardment of their cities?" Zalthek considered this. Destroying human cities would certainly convince them to surrender, but it would also reduce the number of workers available for the labor colonies. The Dominion preferred to keep conquered populations alive when possible. "No. We will land troops and take their planet, piece by piece. Once they see Vorth warriors in their streets, they will lose the will to resist." The Vorth were the Kethron shock troops, 8-foot-tall insect creatures with natural armor and plasma weapons. They had never lost a ground campaign, but they had never fought humans on Earth, and they had never faced Dr. Lisa Harper's quantum tunneling device. In her Montana laboratory, Lisa was about to change the rules of warfare forever. The first Kethron dropships entered Earth's atmosphere like falling meteors. Each ship carried 50 Vorth warriors, the most feared ground troops in the galaxy. They were 8 feet tall with thick insect armor covering their bodies. Their plasma rifles could melt through concrete walls. They had conquered every world they had ever stepped on. Lieutenant Danny Murphy watched through his binoculars as the alien ships landed in Central Park. His unit of 20 soldiers crouched behind, the ruins of a hot dog stand armed with rifles that seemed like toys compared to alien weapons. "Remember the plan," Danny whispered to his men. "We are not trying to win a fair fight. We are trying to make them bleed." The back of the first dropship opened with a hiss of steam. Vorth warriors marched out in perfect formation, their insect eyes scanning for threats. They moved like machines, each step calculated and precise. Danny waited until they were halfway across the park. Then he pressed the button on his radio. The explosion started under the aliens' feet. Danny's engineers had spent 2 days wiring the entire park with homemade bombs. Every tree, every bench, every patch of grass hid an explosive device connected to a remote trigger. The Vorth formation disappeared in clouds of fire and smoke. When the air cleared, half the alien soldiers were dead or wounded. The survivors looked around in confusion, trying to understand what had happened. That was when Danny's men opened fire from the surrounding buildings. They did not try to fight the aliens directly. Instead, they fired a few shots and then ran to new positions before the Vorth could return fire. "Hit and run," Danny shouted into his radio. "Make them chase us." The surviving Vorth warriors pursued the humans into the subway, tunnels under the city. It seemed like a good tactical decision. The underground passages would limit the humans' mobility and prevent them from running away. But the Vorth had never fought in New York subway tunnels before. Sergeant Beth Collins waited in the darkness, with her squad of 10 soldiers. They had spent the last day learning everything they could about captured alien weapons. When a Vorth plasma rifle was damaged in the park battle, Beth's team had taken it apart to see how it worked. The power cell was the key. It generated more energy than anything humans had ever seen, but it had a weakness. If you overloaded the energy output, the cell would explode with the force of a small bomb. Beth heard the heavy footsteps of Vorth warriors echoing through the tunnel. She could see the green glow of their weapons in the darkness. When they were close enough, she threw her improvised grenade. It was an alien power cell with the safety controls removed. It landed at the feet of the lead Vorth and exploded with a flash of green light. The tunnel shook like an earthquake. When the dust settled, 6 alien warriors were dead. The remaining Vorth fired wildly into the darkness, but Beth and her soldiers were already gone. They had escaped through maintenance tunnels that the aliens did not know existed. All across Earth, similar scenes played out as human forces used tactics the Kethron had never encountered. In Tokyo, mechanic Tony Rodriguez had converted his auto repair shop into a weapons factory. He used alien power cells to build energy weapons that human soldiers could actually carry. In London, teacher Mary Johnson coordinated civilian evacuations that served as intelligence networks. Refugees carried information about alien movements from one safe house to another, creating a communication system the Kethron could not intercept. In Detroit, teenager Alex Kim used modified gaming equipment to hack into alien communication frequencies. He could not understand their language, but he could track their radio signals and predict where they would attack next. But the most important battle was happening in Montana, where Dr. Lisa Harper was racing against time to complete her quantum tunneling device. "The power requirements are still too high," her assistant Kevin reported. "We need at least 3 times more electricity than the power plant can generate." Lisa stared at her equations on the whiteboard. She had been working for 36 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination. The alien ultimatum would expire in 12 more hours. "What if we do not try to tunnel a large object?" she asked. "What if we start with something very small?" "How small?" "Small enough that we only need the power we have available." Lisa began drawing new calculations. Instead of trying to teleport a nuclear bomb, what if she could teleport something the size of a baseball? It would still bypass the alien shields completely. Kevin understood immediately. A small nuclear device, maybe not big enough to destroy their ship, but big enough to damage it seriously. Exactly. And once we prove the concept works, we can build bigger versions. Lisa picked up her phone and called the White House directly. President Kate Manning answered personally. "Madam President, I need every nuclear engineer in the country to come to Montana immediately, and I need them to bring the smallest nuclear warhead we have." "How small?" "Small enough to fit in a backpack." While Lisa worked on her weapon, the ground war continued to rage across Earth. The Vorth were learning that humans did not fight like any enemy they had faced before. These creatures did not line up in neat formations to be slaughtered. They hid in buildings, struck from ambush, and disappeared before the aliens could respond. Commander Zaltek watched reports from the surface with growing frustration. His ground forces were taking heavy casualties in every engagement. The humans seemed to know exactly where to hit and when to run. "How many Vorth have we lost?" he asked Sub-Commander Vextar. "Over 200 in the first day, Commander. The humans are using our own weapons against us." "Impossible. Their technology is too primitive to understand Kethron energy systems. Nevertheless, they have learned to overload our power cells and use them as explosives. They are also using captured plasma rifles with surprising effectiveness." Zaltek's reptilian features twisted in anger. No conquered species had ever adapted this quickly to alien technology. Most civilizations took years to understand even basic Kethron principles. "Double the ground forces," he ordered. "Send every fourth warrior we have. Crush this resistance immediately." But even as more alien dropships headed toward Earth, Lisa Harper was putting the finishing touches on humanity's most desperate gamble. Her quantum tunneling device looked like a collection of metal tubes and computer equipment held together, with spare parts and hope. "Power levels are stable," Kevin reported. "The targeting system is locked onto the alien command ship." Lisa held the small nuclear device in her hands. It was no bigger than a football, but it contained enough explosive power to level several city blocks. If her calculations were correct, this little bomb would appear inside the alien flagship. "Without warning. Are you ready?" she asked. Kevin nodded. "Initiating quantum tunnel in 3, 2, 1. The device hummed with energy. Lisa felt the air around her vibrate as space itself began to bend. Then there was a flash of light and the nuclear device vanished. 2 seconds later, Commander Zaltek's flagship exploded in a ball of fire visible from the surface of Earth. Lisa Harper had just changed the course of the war. The explosion of Commander Zaltek's flagship lit up the night sky like a second sun. Every human on Earth could see it burning in orbit above them. For the first time since the aliens arrived, people began to hope that maybe they could win this war. Sub-Commander Vextar stared at the wreckage of his commander's ship through the viewing screen of his vessel. Half the bridge crew was dead. Commander Zaltek was gone. And somehow, impossibly, the primitive humans had destroyed the most powerful warship in the Kethron fleet. "How did they do it?" he asked his science officer. "Unknown, Sub-Commander. Our sensors detected no incoming missiles or energy beams. The explosion came from inside the ship's reactor core." Vextar's yellow eyes narrowed. "That is impossible. Nothing can penetrate our shields." But even as he spoke, another Kethron cruiser exploded in the distance, then another. The humans were striking ships across the entire fleet with weapons that seemed to come from nowhere. In her Montana laboratory, Dr. Lisa Harper was working faster than she had ever worked in her life. The success of her first quantum tunneling attack had proven the concept worked. Now she needed to build more devices and build them quickly. "How many nuclear warheads do we have?" she asked the military engineers who had arrived from across the country. Colonel Amy Stevens checked her tablet. 47 small devices like the one you just used, but we can make more if you give us time." "We do not have time," Lisa replied. "The aliens will figure out what we are doing and adapt their defenses. We need to hit as many ships as possible before they can react." Engineer Carlos Martinez looked up from the quantum tunneling device he was assembling. "Dr. Harper, I think I can miniaturize this design. Make it small enough that special forces teams could carry them into battle." Lisa studied his drawings. "How small?" "Backpack size. A single soldier could operate it." "Do it. Build as many as you can." Across the country, Captain Linda Carter was leading a special forces mission that would have been impossible just days earlier. Her team of 12 Navy SEALs had been sent to capture an alien processing facility where thousands of human prisoners were being held. The facility was protected by Vorth guards and energy barriers that no conventional weapon could penetrate. But Linda's team was not carrying conventional weapons. "Remember, we appear inside the facility," she told her men as they checked their equipment. "No alarms, no warning. We have maybe 5 minutes before they realize what happened. Each SEAL carried one of Carlos Martinez's miniaturized quantum tunneling devices. They were crude and dangerous, but they worked. Linda pressed the activation button and felt the strange sensation of space bending around her. 1 second she was standing in a field outside the alien base. The next second she was inside the main control room, surrounded by surprised Vorth guards. The aliens were fast, but humans were faster when they had surprise on their side. Linda's team eliminated the guards before they could raise an alarm. Within minutes, they had shut down the energy barriers and opened the prison cells. "This is Carter to all units," she radioed. "Package is secure. Beginning prisoner evacuation." But the real victory was not the rescue mission. It was the intelligence they gathered from the alien computers. The Kethron had been transmitting detailed reports about the human resistance back to their home world. Linda's team copied everything before they left. President Kate Manning read the translated alien reports with growing amazement. The Kethran were terrified. In all their centuries of conquest, they had never faced an enemy like humanity. "They describe us as unpredictable and dangerous," she told her advisors. "Listen to this. Human forces adapt to new situations faster than any known species. They learn from each defeat and become stronger. Recommend immediate evacuation before they develop more advanced weapons." General Susan Blake smiled for the first time in days. "They want to run away." "But they will not," Kate replied. "They have too much pride. They will send reinforcements instead." She was right. Within hours, long-range sensors detected another alien fleet approaching Earth. This one was twice as large as the first, with over 400 ships. Sub-Commander Vextar, now in command of the remaining Kethran forces, felt relief when he saw the reinforcements arrive. Fleet Admiral Kexthol was the most experienced military commander in the Dominion. He would know how to deal with these troublesome humans. "Report," Admiral Kexthol demanded as soon as his ship entered orbit. "The humans have developed some kind of weapon that bypasses our shields," Vextar explained. "They can attack our ships from inside without warning." "Impossible. Show me the tactical data." Vextar transmitted everything they had learned about human fighting tactics. The Admiral studied the reports with growing disbelief. "They use our own weapons against us?" "Yes, Admiral. They learn to overload our power cells and turn them into explosives. They have also reverse-engineered our plasma rifles. And their ground forces? They do not fight in formations. They attack from ambush and then disappear. Our Vorth warriors are trained for conventional warfare, not this kind of guerrilla fighting." Admiral Kexthol had conquered 15 worlds in his career. He had never encountered anything like this before. But he was not about to let a primitive species defeat the mighty Kethran Dominion. "We will end this quickly," he declared. "Begin orbital bombardment of their major cities. If these humans want to fight, we will show them the price of resistance." But before the Admiral could give the order to fire, his flagship shuddered under the impact of multiple explosions. Alarms rang throughout the ship as internal systems failed. Dr. Lisa Harper had just activated 20 quantum tunneling devices simultaneously, sending nuclear warheads directly into the heart of the alien command vessel. Admiral Kexthol died without ever understanding how the humans had done it. On Earth, people cheered as they watched the second alien flagship explode in orbit. But Lisa Harper was not celebrating. She was already working on her next project. "What if we could make the quantum tunnels bigger?" she asked Carlos Martinez. "Big enough to send people through?" Carlos stared at her drawings. "You want to teleport soldiers directly onto alien ships? Why not? If we can send bombs through solid matter, we should be able to send people too." It was a crazy idea. It was also exactly the kind of impossible plan that humans specialized in making work. The Kethran had brought their best fleet and their most experienced commander to crush human resistance. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that got stronger with every battle, learned from every defeat, and refused to give up no matter how hopeless the situation looked. For the first time in their history, the Kethran Dominion was losing a war. 6 months after the first alien ship appeared in Earth's sky, Admiral Frank Collins stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the Kethran homeworld grow larger on the viewing screen. His ship was called the USS Defiance, and it had once been an alien cruiser until humans captured it and made it their own. Frank had been a captain when the war started. Now he commanded a fleet of 60 ships, half of them captured from the enemy and rebuilt with human technology. His crew included former auto mechanic Tony Rodriguez as chief engineer and ex-pilot Linda Carter as his tactical officer. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface," reported Communications Officer Alex Kim. "Put it on screen." The face that appeared was unlike any Kethran the humans had seen before. This alien wore golden robes and a crown made of strange metal. His yellow eyes showed fear instead of the usual arrogance. "I am Emperor Velthar, supreme ruler of the Kethran Dominion," the alien said. His voice shook as he spoke. "I wish to negotiate terms of surrender." Frank looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were people who had lost friends and family in the alien attacks. They had every right to demand revenge. "Terms?" Frank replied. "You attacked our world without warning. You tried to enslave our entire species. What terms do you think you deserve?" "Please," the Emperor begged. "We did not understand what kind of species you were. We thought you were like the others we had conquered. We were wrong." On Earth, President Kate Manning watched the conversation from the White House Situation Room. The war had changed her from a politician into a leader. She had made the hardest decisions any president had ever faced, and somehow humanity had survived. "What do you want from us?" she asked through the communication link. Emperor Velthar's image turned to face her. "Peace. We want peace between our peoples. The Kethran Dominion formally surrenders to the human forces. We will withdraw from all conquered worlds and return them to their original inhabitants." Dr. Lisa Harper, now serving as Chief Science Officer for the human fleet, studied the alien leader with interest. Her quantum tunneling technology had made this moment possible. Human soldiers could now appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. No alien defense could stop them. "How do we know you will keep your word?" she asked. "Because we have no choice," the Emperor replied honestly. "Your people have shown us that resistance is not only possible, it is inevitable. Every world we conquered is now in rebellion. They have seen what humans can do, and they want to learn from you." Frank Collins had grown up reading stories about brave soldiers and impossible victories. He had never imagined he would be living in one of those stories. "Here are our terms," he said. "First, all Kethran military forces will return to your home system and stay there. Second, you will provide technology and resources to help rebuild the worlds you destroyed. Third, you will establish a permanent embassy on Earth where human observers can monitor your activities. And fourth," President Manning added, "you will help us create a Galactic Defense Council to protect other species from the kind of unprovoked aggression you showed to Earth." Emperor Velthar nodded quickly. "We agree to all terms. But please, no more attacks on our ships. We have lost enough." The formal surrender ceremony took place on the captured Kethran flagship in orbit around their home world. Representatives from 47 liberated worlds attended to witness the historic moment. Frank Collins accepted the Emperor's sword, an ancient symbol of Kethran military power. As he held the weapon, he thought about all the humans who had died to reach this moment. Captain Joe Martinez, who sacrificed his ship to gather intelligence. Lieutenant Danny Murphy, who led the first ground resistance. Thousands of soldiers and civilians who had refused to give up even when defeat seemed certain. "This war is over," Frank announced, "but our job is not finished. We are going to make sure that no other species ever faces the threat of unprovoked conquest again." The news of victory reached Earth faster than light, transmitted through quantum communication devices that Dr. Harper had developed from alien technology. In cities around the world, people celebrated in the streets. Church bells rang. Fireworks lit up the night sky. But the real celebration was quieter and more meaningful. Families reunited with loved ones who had survived the war. Children who had lived in fear could finally play outside again. Scientists and engineers began working on peaceful projects instead of weapons. Tony Rodriguez returned to his auto repair shop in Detroit, But now he also taught classes on alien technology to human engineers. Mary Johnson went back to teaching, but her students now learned about dozens of alien species and distant worlds. Alex Kim started a company that built communication systems for the new Galactic Defense Council. His teenage hacking skills had grown into expertise that connected worlds across the galaxy. Dr. Lisa Harper established the Quantum Research Institute, where scientists from many species worked together to explore the mysteries of the universe. Her quantum tunneling technology was now used for peaceful exploration instead of warfare. President Kate Manning served 2 more terms before retiring to write her memoirs. The book was titled When Humans Said No and became required reading in schools across 48 different worlds. Admiral Frank Collins remained in command of the Human Defense Fleet, which patrolled the galaxy to protect smaller species from aggressive empires. His ships carried a simple message: humanity stands with those who cannot stand alone. The Kethron had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that humans were just like every other species they had conquered. They thought fear would make people surrender and despair would crush resistance. They had never encountered a species that grew stronger under pressure, that turned desperation into determination, that refused to accept defeat even when victory seemed impossible. 5 years after the war ended, when the Zephyrian Empire threatened to invade the peaceful Alterian colonies, they received a message from the Galactic Defense Council. Humanity has been asked to mediate this dispute. We strongly suggest you reconsider your actions. The Zephyrians withdrew their fleet the same day. Earth had been just another target on the Kethron list of worlds to conquer. But humanity had shown the galaxy that some species should never be underestimated, never be written off as defeated, and never ever be pushed too far. The humans had made their enemies rue the day they chose Earth as a target. Now they made sure no other species would face the same threat alone.